Mrs. Oliver here. I'm going to go over our PSSA practice lesson number 13, which is using different sources. This is something that you will be introduced to more at the middle school level when you write something and you use information from another book, another source. You still need to know what those sources are before you start using them independently. So if I wanted to write a report on, let's say, a gecko, I could find more information about geckos a few different ways. I could read an interview, maybe of a zoo handler. I could use an encyclopedia, which has factual information. I could read a National Geographic magazine that might have information on a gecko. I could possibly look on the internet for sources. When you are using information from someone else, you need to cite it, which means you give them credit for what you're using. I'm going to read you a passage called The Citizen Science, and I want you to be looking for maybe some places that this writer got other information. It wasn't their thought. It wasn't what they researched. They got it from someone else, but they're using it in their writing to support their idea. Citizen science. Ordinary citizens are contributing to the field of science every day by making observations, recording data, and taking photographs. They are volunteering their time to help scientists. These volunteers are taking part in a program called Citizen Science. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation recently requested that citizens with swimming pools take part in a survey. They wanted people to monitor their pools in order to look for the Asian long-horned beetle. If people found this beetle, they were asked to contact the department. A project like this involves many community members actively looking for the invasive beetle. If they can find the beetles early enough, they can prevent harmful damage to trees. Another project, the Worm Watch Lab, asks people in the community to record data for a scientific research. A group of scientists have discovered that if a certain type of worm lays fewer or more eggs than normal, it may have a specific gene deficit. An understanding of this deficit can help scientists understand and help humans. The problem is that it takes too long for scientists to identify which worms have the defect. The time involved in finding the right worms takes away from the time needed to study them. So, scientists ask people to watch worms being recorded on webcams. The people watch the worms and record when they lay the eggs. The scientists use the data to identify worms that they should study. Scientists have an important job to do, but they often don't have enough people to help with their studies. However, with the help of other people in the community, scientists can gather more information than they ever could on their own. Okay, so as I was listening to this text, it was about how people can be good citizens by helping on projects that make their community better. One was looking for a beetle, and the other was looking at a worm. Number 1, based on the article, how can ordinary citizens help in scientific studies? Citizens can track beetles by their swimming pools. They can also watch worms lay eggs and track the time. Underline the names of 2 organizations mentioned in the article that use citizen services. So I remember one was in New York, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and the other one was the Worm Watch Lab. What type of resources do you think the author used to write this article? Well, it kind of sounds to me like they looked at surveys and maybe community data. The surveys come from up here where it says people took place in the survey, and then the Worm Watch Lab asked people to record the data, and that data helped the scientists decide what to study more. So here's some of those resources I was talking about before. An atlas is a book that we can refer to. It normally has maps in it. So I may look in an atlas if I want to learn about the different oceans in the world, the continents. There may be a section on mountains. There may be a section on volcanic areas. B is a dictionary. That's where I look up a word and its meaning. A periodical is kind of like a newspaper. It normally tells us about events. And a thesaurus is when we look up a word, but we are looking for words that match that meaning. So we would have lots of synonyms. They often list antonyms, which are opposites as well. So these are pretty close, a dictionary and a thesaurus, but a thesaurus is not really giving us meaning. They're showing us how words are alike or different. Which reference material would you use to find an article about the results from the Worm Watch Lab? Well, I want to get information about the data. So I'm not going to need a map. I don't need to know the meaning of a word. And a thesaurus is also giving me information about words. So the only one that really makes sense is a periodical, which again I said is like a newspaper or a magazine that tells about events. Why is it important to choose websites carefully when using them as a source for research? And explain your reasoning. Okay. So you are just kind of starting your internet citizenship. When you use the internet, there are tons of sources. Sometimes we have people like other kids that are just kind of sharing what they know. They might share their opinion. Getting a source from another child is not really the best choice because we don't know what their educational background is. Do they have experience in what they're saying? Do they know the facts? This can also occur with adults, however. There's a lot of adults that may post something on YouTube, or there might be information on Wikipedia that is not exactly factual. It might be put in someone's own words. The best place to look for information on the internet would be sources that are credible. Credible means that they only report on the facts. So maybe for science, we would look at like National Geographic. Maybe if we were looking for the news, we might do like the New York Post. If we were looking for the weather, I might look at the Weather Channel. You want to make sure that you are picking a site that is known for having real information, factual information. Also, a good clue that helps you is how a website ends. So if a website ends with www.something.edu, that edu at the end means education, so we know that they're giving us information. You might also see a website, www.blah-blah-blah-blah-blah.gov, which stands for government. That would be a good place to look. You might also have a website that ends in www.something .org, which means it's an organization that's putting forth that information. If your website ends with something like a .com, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad source. You just have to make sure that that information is coming from a factual place instead of a person's opinion, like a blog where someone can write anything that are their own thoughts. You want to make sure that it is backed up with facts. Okay, you have a passage, The Early History of Glass. It looks like they're going to be asking you about some reference materials. You have multiple choice, short answer. You have a second passage called Night Lights. Ooh, I like this one. And multiple choice and a short answer. You have 11 again to complete on your own. Please check back for teacher feedback on your answers. See you next time.